Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to go over a couple of the first steps in getting things lined up so we can set up a master trust account. And that's going to be one of the first steps, getting that birth certificate, of course. And we don't have to worry about authenticating the birth certificate, guys. If you've got one, you've got it authenticated, that's fine. We can still use it, but you don't have to. Basically, what we're doing with that birth certificate is just putting a value to it. That itself is going to authenticate it through the process, what's called perfection. What we're doing here, you hear about people doing the UCC, SPEC, secured party creditors, and having to perfect title. Well, that's the process of the conversion from the monetary system to a credit transitional system, is perfecting the title so you no longer have to use their equipment. You're just going to use a plastic card, transfer your credits. Nobody else can dig into it. That's the basics of what we're trying to do. So the main thing we're going to be talking about is the Uniform Power of Attorney Act, because that's one of the main things we're going to do after the birth certificate. Is we got to make sure we've got other things set up, such as living will and stuff. In order to do all that stuff, we want to make sure nobody else is going to assert any kind of assumed powers of attorney. So what you have to do is write up a durable power of attorney in fact. And in that, you're going to revoke all other previous powers of attorney. Unless you've got some setup that you want to work with. You know, there are some people that already have powers of attorney set up for certain things. So, you know, if you feel comfortable with that trustee, that's fine. But that's the important thing about this, folks, is when we're doing this, that power of trustee, your power of attorney takes a lot of responsibility. Not just in the person that you're assigning, but it takes a lot of responsibility in yourself, making sure that that assignment is a proper one. We don't want to go assigning a trustee that isn't looking out for our best interest and is going to violate the funding or the assets by commingling, anything like that. So be very, very choosy about doing this. This is the most important aspect. Most of them are going to be short and simple. That's all you got to do is show your intent that you're revoking other previous powers, and you're sound mind and body and capable of making your own decisions. That's the basics of a general durable power of attorney. In fact, the things beyond that, when we start assigning other things in the trust to a trustee, we have to be sure that we know that trustee is capable of doing it. And the most important aspect of a trustee is to be able to do their own research so that they do know at each and every point in their assignment that they are doing what's according to the law. And so with no further ado, let's go ahead and get things swinging. Again, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. So keep coming back and we'll keep learning together. And a couple points I want to point out before we get started with the durable power of attorney is, and I have to look this up and get it up in the thing there, but the basics of everything is arbitration. It's just, there's no other way around it. And everything we do when we discuss, we're in the middle of arbitration right now. This is in fact an arbitration. You guys are going to get some information here tonight. And if you think it's good information, you're going to turn around and you're going to agree to come back tomorrow night. But it's not set in stone. So it's just a simple contract. When we start getting into other contracts, that's when we've got to start worrying about the wording and the language and making sure that the trustee knows what they're doing, because then we do have a third person involved. And this here, it's just a simple contract, me and you. And if you want to come back tomorrow night, I'd be glad to have you. You know, there's no third party except for this device, but it's not really a trustee. It's just a transitional unit. So when we assign the trustees, we've got to be careful. It's going to be arbitration in everything we do. And that trustee, if you trust them, they should know the trustee position already. And you should as well. You should know what trustees are required to do and what they're capable of doing. So it's important to get familiar with federal arbitration. And we'll go over that at some point too, because that's part of, like I said, it's part of bankruptcy. When you go into bankruptcy, you're going to arbitrate there. And it's basically all it is. We're just going to fix the records and arbitrate things. So nobody should be accusing us of paper terrorism or anything like that. We shouldn't be filing documents with the court. It's going to be a matter of private right and going through a bank, establishing certain powers and setting up a commercial transaction of converting everything from the probate court to your own private estate under your own trustee assigned. And one of the things I want to point out is that in 5 USC 301, under departmental regulations, is where the birth certificate comes in. And if you're familiar with Title V of the United States Code, that's government, organization, and employees. So what's happened is the birth certificate is actually meant it's a statistical element for the federal government to be able to keep tabs on the people that are under its protection, not necessarily its jurisdiction, but under its protection. Because when we think about this, even a foreigner coming to America, when they cross that border, they're not a citizen of the United States, but the United States still has it bound. They are bound by duty to protect that foreigner while they are on American soil. So long as that foreigner is operating as a man, just like anybody else, and is not committing any crimes, they have a responsibility and obligation to protect internationally protected people. And that's what we're at. That's where we're at. We're not domestic people of the government. We are not government organization employees. We are that foreign entity that they have a responsibility to protect as international people. International people. So it's very important to realize that. All comes from the government organization for their risk management. And that's why we have insurance and stuff and all that. The next one, and I'll find these links and post these. These are from printed materials. You guys know I go through and I print up a lot of material offline for my own records so I can keep them and do my own further research. So I will have to look these links up and post them again. But the next one is it's a short one I think everybody should read. It's about 9 or 10 pages, 11 pages. It's 11 page long document from Harvard Law Review, and it talks about tracing your trust property, so that it's, even if it gets confused and commingled, you can still trace that property and remove it. And that's what we're talking about, is removing all the probate, everything from probate into a private estate. And that's why I say we have to establish that durable power of attorney in fact and get a living will set up. So when we do that, we've got something that is, even though it's not tangible, it's the aspect of having it set up already so that we can put all that in, even though there's not going to be anything to put in. Just a value that we're going to put on a certificate so we can monetize that. And that's what we're going to transfer. All their information, all the information, everything should be expunged from their record. And the value of all that information should be transferred to a credit account. And that's what we're looking at. So I'll post that when we get done, because that's very important to learn how to do this stuff without commingling the funds. That's the biggest thing about it, is that's actually what they're doing, is they're conveying the US dollar for a Federal Reserve note. And people don't comprehend that. That's an unlawful conversion. The Federal Reserve notes are only meant for government use and not for the private people. We're supposed to be using US dollars. And that's what the effect of this is going to take on. Those credits are going to be deposited into an account. And it doesn't matter if anybody calls it a US dollar or a Federal Reserve note from now on. It's a credit. So no matter how the internal monetary system fluctuates or changes, that $1 in your account will always be $1 according to the market. Always. Now, the next one is the Uniform Power of Attorney Act. And this one I'm going to look up and pull up right now. Not sure if I've got the right one here. Uniform Power of Attorney Act. Oh, come on. Now my mouse wants to quit working. Oh, they have a new one out. So we'll have to get that one up and going. It's going to be the basic same stuff. There might be some minor changes. No. There we go. I think that's it. Okay. So I just ended up clicking on a link and it downloaded it again. It's a straight download. If you put in Uniform Power of Attorney Act 2006, a PDF will come up, and that's what we're looking at. And basically, I went through, and I go through these writings that I print up and make my notes and stuff. And I wanted to go through here and pull something specific. Primary purpose of durable power of attorney is to provide an individual with an inexpensive, non-judicial method of surrogate property management in case you become incapacitated. And what it is that was done when you were born. Instead of getting an estate as an adult, when we turn 18 and we walk out the door of mom and dad's house and dad says, here's your part of the estate, is the way it used to be. Today, we have estates being set up at birth and nobody even realizes it. And then when they turn 18, the state continues administrating that estate without saying anything to anybody. Even though it's published on the record, it's their record. Like I said, it's government employee stuff. And so they don't put it in the public school system. That's why they took the civil courses out. If you're not going to be part of the government, you're just going to take benefit, then you don't need to worry about the civil system. We'll only catch the ones that are really bright. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. So starts out right away with the education system and people not realizing we do have an estate that we need to settle if we're going to follow our Lord's words and live in prosperity and abundance. Because one of the requirements with that, just like any other trust, as a trustee, one of our responsibilities is to replenish. See, as a trustee, we don't help the beneficiary squander the estate. As a trustee, one of the main functions of the trustee is to help the beneficiary learn the estate so they can capitalize on it and build it. That's the purpose of the estate, is to build it. In that replenishment, not in a materialistic, greedy sense, so you can replenish and build more wealth for yourself, but more so you can replenish, so that if your neighbor for some reason has a child that has some kind of disease and it kind of sets them back for life, you can be one of those neighbors and says, well, we've been doing this long enough. Here's some extra. That's what it takes. That's what it truly takes to spread the word of our Father, is showing that we really care without the monetary system, because that's what's fucking us up. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, for the love of money is the root of all evil. So we really need to comprehend that in order to be prosperous ourselves, the only way I can help myself is by helping others. And in that helping others, I see helping myself. I really do. I sit here, I don't have a whole lot today, but it's a lot different than the way I thought yesterday. Yesterday, I was thinking I needed money and I didn't need you. Today, I know I need you, and money can go to hell. It can burn in a fire just like they do the book burnings. I don't care. So it's very important to realize the aspect of building the trust is paramount in choosing a trustee that's going to be able to operate appropriately. The next thing is the meaning and effect of the trustee. Here they use attorney. I'm going to try to use trustee as much as possible, because that's what we want to get into, is the aspect of using a trustee and knowing that even though it's a position where they turn things over, there has to be somebody assigning them. So that is where the point of turnover comes from. And that's why it's important to comprehend your durable powers of attorney in making assignments for the trustee. The meaning and effect of a power of attorney is determined by the law of jurisdiction, indicated in the power of attorney and in the absence of an indication of jurisdiction. What this is saying is that you are, in fact, self-governing. Read that again. The meaning and effect of a power of attorney is determined by the law of jurisdiction indicated in the power of attorney. So if you're going to draw up a power of attorney and you're speaking legalese and everything, you're going to be in that jurisdictional legalese. In that durable power of attorney, if you speak the word of our Father which art in heaven without having to worry about any codes or anything, and you just stated, I'm of sound mind and body, I will no longer accept the personage of an attorney. I'm going to take care of my own affairs, It's really pretty simple. I'm getting ready to draw one up for my companion, as well as a living will. So we'll be going over that sometime soon too. But in that, if we were dealing with a trust, the law is the law of the trust, and that is the jurisdiction. So when people start telling you that they're going to do this irrevocable trust or this or that, you got to be very careful what you're titling that trust. Mine is the Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union. I didn't name it a trust. I named it the Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union. If you want to know it's a trust, realize by the way it's set up that it operates as a trust because I said so. I'm the one that created it. I'm the one that created that jurisdiction. And that's how important it is. In the absence of an indication of jurisdiction by the law of which jurisdiction in which the power was executed. And so when we realize that we're age of 18 and we can go out and make our own decisions, and at the same time that the state has an estate set up in our name, and they're commingling, truly they are commingling in our private estate, they're asserting a probate estate, knowing that probate means that it's the estate of a decedent and not a live man. They are two different things, very distinguishable. And these lawyers and judges and clerks that walk in and out of these courts know this. Don't ever let them fool you and play dumb. It's very simple. That's their entire job, is to probate. In other words, move items that nobody is stating they have a will over. They are probating and moving what they claim to be abandoned property. Because at the age of 18, nobody went to the state and claimed it and pulled it out of that jurisdiction. And that's what that is. By the law of the jurisdiction in which the power of attorney was executed. So when they executed that power of attorney when you were born through inducing mom at the hospital and created that certificate of live birth, that was the power of attorney set up. There may not be a statement directly, but it was set up as power of attorney through its recording in that jurisdiction. Now that it's in that jurisdiction and it's a probate jurisdiction, again, this is why people say they assume you're dead all your life. You're not dead. They know you're not dead. They're just taking advantage of your cognitive dissonance. And this is why we're going to get that birth certificate, clear that record up. That's where it stems from. The effect of a power of attorney recognizes that a foreign power of attorney or one executed before the effective date of this Uniform Power of Attorney Act may have been created under different default rules than those in the act. And so what that's telling you right there is that it doesn't matter how you set it up. You don't have to follow the Uniform Power of Attorney Act because this is according to their legal jurisdiction, and this is the only place it really applies. But the principle is solid. And that's why I say you draw up your own durable power of attorney by establishing your own foreign jurisdiction. Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union is not Keith Orland Little. It is Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union. Therefore, it must be foreign to Keith Orland Little. It's just like KOL is foreign to Keiko and Little. It may be relative, but it is foreign. It is not the same. Similar, but not the same. Very important small words that we need to pay attention to. And there's an important part when we're doing up the durable powers of attorney. In fact, like I said, the reason that they're established is that if you happen to become incapable of managing your affairs at some time, you should already have one set up. And having said that, if you've already got one set up, but you're just fine in health and everything, doesn't mean that you shouldn't still have some kind of trustee helping to take care of certain things. It's like me and my companion. She doesn't do things by herself. I do them for her. When people send her collection letters and everything, she doesn't step up as beneficiary and then switch hats and become trustee. As beneficiary, she hands everything to her trustee, and I take care of them in that capacity directly. And that's what it's about, is making sure that you have somebody that you can competently have full faith in. And again, very important that when we get into court situations and we start talking about, we recognize our durable power of attorney, in fact, but we're standing in the middle of a courtroom, it proves that we don't. If you're going to a court and you know your durable power of attorney, in fact, or express that you do, then you don't. Because if you truly know your durable power of attorney, in fact, you don't go to court because they've never gotten an assignment from you. Therefore, they are not your trustee. They are, in fact, operating as an enemy because they don't want you to go to that court to draw up a contract to equal consideration and equal benefit. What they're doing is drawing up a contract in a constructive trust fraud to rape your estate. All of your expectations must be reasonable. You can't, just because you're in a different jurisdiction and you're creating your own estate doesn't mean you can make babble. It still has to be a reasonable document that would say, okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, I would see how you could grant somebody the power to cut down the tree in the backyard. It's not my backyard. But you can't go around granting somebody as trustee to cut down the tree in somebody else's backyard because it blocks your view. You can't be doing that. You have to be sensible and reasonable and logical about every decision you make. The mandatory duties acting in accordance with the principal's reasonable expectations, if known, and otherwise in the principal's best interest, acting in good faith and acting only with the scope of authority granted. Okay. In this public estate or public trust operation, the authorities that are granted aren't actually granted, folks. They are appointed by somebody else that has nothing to do with your estate, but rather the public trust. And what they do is they go around appointing each other to take care of this paperwork and this paperwork. And it actually has nothing to do with any powers of the trust itself as an attorney. It's just an assignment through their government operations. And that's the abuse. It's not necessarily fraud, but it's abusive because they're just doing their job. That's all they're doing, just their job. And that's under a appointment and not an actual assignment of a trustee position. And this is one of my favorite. And like I said, there's a new one out 2021, so I'll have to get that one and see if there's much difference. But this is one of my favorite documents because it does explain how that trustee position works and the principles of law and equity. And that's what we're going to go on right now. Principle of law and equity. Unless displaced by a provision of this act, the principles of law and equity supplement this act. In other words, this is one of those few acts that they actually mention the principles of law and equity. And in saying that it supplements this act provides for law and equity through those assignments. This is the only way to get equity, is if you know how to be a beneficiary, a trustee, and a grantor grantee absolute. You have to be able to know how to take that title, grab that title, amend it appropriately, and surrender it back to them under the proper assignment, giving them assignment to make sure they correct their records and keep them accurate from this point on. I'll go ahead and look up those links, like I said, and get them posted after the Zoom posts. Just like always, I'll post them in the comment section. But their main elements to look at: 5 USC 306, where it talks about it's the first place that they talk about the birth certificate, and they tell you it's for the Department of Defense. Department of Defense. It's a statistics document that helps them be able to keep track of international persons. Now, the disconnection there is that they don't realize they have a duty. They are bound in duty to protect those international people. But at the same time, they're calling us them. They're saying we are part of their organization, when in fact we're not. We are not the government body. We are not that political body. We are the sovereign body that employs a government body to take care of those that we cannot. I'm not a doctor. If I had a child that had some kind of gimp thing going on with his leg, I might need to have somebody a little bit more professional take care of it. So I would have to have the cognitive ability that if I can't take care of myself, to be able to assign somebody else to do it for me. People today are going to doctors and not doing the proper assignment. That doctor is a trustee. People are sending their kids to school. The teachers are trustees. And you're just handing everything over with a quick signature. You got to learn how to make the assignments and get everything out of that probate public education system, public information system, and make sure you know what you're doing, so you can start raising the foundation of love like it's meant to. We're supposed to raise our hands like this, not bow and pray all the time. It's fine to bow and pray, but you do that in private. While we're out here in public, we're supposed to be praising him, saying, yes, we see your glory. We see how it's working, because we're working it. You got to get off your ass and quit being the beneficiary. You got to learn how to be the trustee yourself, so you can be the grantor grantee, because that's what we're working toward. We're going to be the grantor grantee on that birth certificate when we grant the transfer of the monetary value from their system to ours, so we can start using that transitional credit without having to worry about signatures. We just call up the local banker and say, make it so. Or it starts operating automatically. And then every year you just renew your contract. Every year you just renew that contract with the post office. Boom. And everything should be going through automatically. Everything's electronic now. It happens like that. And that's why I'm pushing this, get that electronic record done. That's where they're converting everything over to electronic record, and that electronic record will take everything right from your estate quicker than the paperwork can. Paperwork used to take days, months, years. Now they can correct an account like that. So we got about 5 minutes left. I'm gonna open the board. If anybody's got any questions regarding anything, please ask. You're fine. I see him.
Come ice me up when you're done.
Hey, Brother Keith, I have a couple questions.
Sure, I see you made it on time tonight.
Yeah, I did actually. Well, I get kind of confused with the 2-hour difference.
Yeah.
So the power of attorney that's signed over, because sometimes women have ultrasounds.
Yes.
So that's even before the hospital. So it seems
Yeah,
to me
prenatal.
Right. So it seems like that card carrying membership cartel is the one with a really big power of attorney that needs to be revoked. But I think that can be cut off directly at the Social Security office, correct?
Yes, that's the main one that we're going to revoke. When we do the durable power of attorney, in fact, it's just a simple document, and I'll post mine later. I think mine was just a couple, 2-3 pages, 3 or 4 pages. So it's really short. And when you put that on the record that you have attained the durable power of attorney, in fact, it should affect everybody. But the Social Security one is the one that uses that import-export information number, the Social Security number. That's an import-export number known as a tax identification number. That's the one we're getting rid of.
So then the next part of that is, part of the issue is that, people want to think it's a name, but it's actually not. You and I both know that it translates down into a number and that it's an actual property. It's a title to the estate. And what happens is, when they're left at that location, so say the hospital, I've met a man and a woman that I spoke to directly. They changed the address from the debtor, the location of the debtor that's in UCC 9. What they do is by having a registered account at the post office, they're exporting those documents out of the public back into the private estate. And it's building the res, which then credit can be drawn off of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that document remaining on their internal records operates by Federal Reserve notes. When you capture that, do your banker's acceptance on it in writing up your invoice for the transfer of the credits from their Federal Reserve value system to your credit online instant credit transition account. That's what we're doing. We're removing it from that public estate and being disseminated as public information for their use for employment and compensation and profit and all that. And we're no longer going to use that for their investments or anything. We're going to use it strictly for the education of our future generations and replenishing the knowledge that it takes to live without the commercial system.
Well, that's an interesting one because of the difference between the certificate of live birth and how that is basically the receipt for the complete estate. And once through that registered mail, that at that point, then someone can take the birth certificate in alliance, right, in agreement with the Trading and Enemy Act, and take the certificate and hand it over so that we're no longer considered belligerent.
Yeah, and you can do it. You don't need the birth certificate either. You can do that all with the certificate of live birth. You can do it all to avoid multiplicity of suits. One certificate is all you need. One receipt for full acquittance and discharge.
Okay. Because I know that they're two separate accounts, right? One's the state and then the other. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing how those work out. And that's not even getting into the post office's vital statistics either. We haven't started even talking about those.
And see, that's why I say, and I got to make this real quick because we're getting ready to cut out, but that's why I say the post office is one form of government, whereas the United States is a different form of government. The United States is completely commercial. The post office itself is international, federal, commercial. It's basically a government of its own. It is the one world government. The postal system